On a quiet Halloween morning in rural Ohio, what seemed like a typical day for the Liske family quickly turned into a nightmare that would shock the entire community. Behind the peaceful facade of their home, a series of events unfolded that would leave three family members dead and one man as the prime suspect. In the northern suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, lived the Liske family, a blended household of five. The family included 53-year-old Bill, his wife Susan, aged 48, and their three children, Devon, Derek, and William. Devon and Derek were Susan's children from a previous marriage, while William was Bill's son from his first marriage. The family seemed to live a relatively peaceful life in a spacious home situated on hundreds of acres near Lake Erie, close to national parks and wildlife areas. Their favorite pastimes included hunting and fishing, activities that allowed them to enjoy the outdoors together. Susan, who had worked as an office manager for the Northwest Carpentry Training Board, loved gardening, camping, and was known as a loving mother. Bill, a retired Air Force veteran, shared her passion for the outdoors. The kids, especially William, enjoyed spending time near Lake Erie. As the children grew older, they attended church every Sunday, blending into the quiet rural life. However, William had a more turbulent personality. As a child, he was often irritable, bullying other children and stirring up conflict wherever he went. His parents initially dismissed his behavior as typical mischief, expecting it to improve with time, but his disruptive tendencies only worsened during adolescence. By the time William was 15, his behavior had escalated to a point where he had several run-ins with the law. It was around this time that his father, Bill, met Susan through their work and eventually married her in 2001. William resented Susan's arrival into his life. He disliked her presence in the household and openly rebelled against the strict rules she introduced. As the tension between William and his stepmother grew, so did his disobedience. By 2002, at age 16, William had been placed under house arrest for a crime. He had threatened to harm himself, and when the police arrived, the situation escalated into physical violence. William was charged with assault in juvenile court. In 2004, during a heated argument, William struck Susan in the chest. 2 months later, he assaulted her again, hitting her on the head with a coffee mug and stealing her car. Susan, overwhelmed by the violence, pressed serious charges against him. However, William was diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and was deemed unfit for trial. The assault and theft charges were dropped, though his relationship with Susan remained fraught. His father, Bill, made the difficult decision to place William in a psychiatric group home near Lake Erie in Sandusky. Even though William was under treatment, he continued to pose a threat to those around him. During his time in Sandusky, William had multiple violent encounters with law enforcement, one of which occurred when his father was present to pick him up. Despite the treatment, William's condition didn't improve, and he remained agitated. In the fall of 2004, at 18 years old, William's aggression took a frightening turn. One morning, he attempted to attack Susan while she was in the shower. Although Susan managed to fend him off, she was left injured, both physically and emotionally drained from the prolonged abuse. That night, Bill made the painful decision to expel William from the family home. From that point on, William had to fend for himself. The strained relationship between him and his family worsened, particularly with Susan and his half-siblings, leading to frequent arguments whenever they crossed paths. Over the next few years, William continued to receive sporadic treatment for his schizoaffective disorder. By 2007, Bill, despite all the challenges, remained committed to helping his son. He sought legal guardianship over William in an attempt to secure his release from the psychiatric hospital. Bill's hope was to place William in a halfway house or group home where he could receive more appropriate care. Though William's condition could be somewhat controlled with medication, he often refused to take it, believing he was fine. Instead, he turned to alcohol and marijuana, further complicating his behavior. Thanks to Bill's efforts, William was eventually released from the hospital and placed in a relatively free-living rehabilitation center. However, his visits to his father's home remained tense. Around this time, a neighboring family lost their pet dog, which was found shot. Suspicion fell on William, though no proof was ever found. While it was just a pet, the incident hinted at something darker, raising alarm among the community. To minimize William's interactions with Susan and the neighbors, Bill often took him to the family's cabin in Carroll County on weekends, hoping that some time away might calm his son. The cabin was just a few hours' drive from northern Ohio. Bill often took William there to hunt and talk, hoping these trips would ease the tension between William and the rest of the family and improve his mental state. Unfortunately, this only provided temporary relief and did nothing to address the underlying issues. William's dislike for his stepmother remained unchanged, and his mental health continued to deteriorate. A family friend, Mark, recalled numerous conversations with Bill, where he voiced concerns about the safety of the Liske family. When William started causing trouble and had physical altercations with Bill would frequently call Mark for help. Despite the physical harm he endured, Bill was determined not to give up on his only son, convinced that William wouldn't intentionally hurt his family. On the morning of October 31, 2010, Halloween, Devon, Bill's 16-year-old stepson, returned home around 9:30 a.m. after spending the previous night at his biological father's house. He was getting ready to change clothes before heading to church. As he came downstairs after changing, he encountered William, which struck Devon as odd, as William had already moved out and rarely stayed at the house. The couch had been made into a bed, suggesting William had slept there the night before. They exchanged brief pleasantries, and William asked Devon where he was going, how long he'd be out, and how he was getting there. William's unusually chatty demeanor surprised Devon, as their relationship had always been tense, marked by frequent arguments. Devon shrugged off William's sudden friendliness, answered quickly, and left for church. By 1:30 p.m., after attending church services, Devon returned home. He headed upstairs to play video games in his room. Shortly after, he noticed something strange. The house was eerily quiet. Curious, Devon walked downstairs to check on his mother and stepfather, assuming they had overslept. To his shock, they were still in bed, and his mother's legs were hanging off the edge of the bed. Devon approached and tapped his mother's leg, attempting to wake her. That's when he noticed her pillow stained with what looked like blood. Initially, Devon thought it might have been a Halloween prank from the previous night's party, but as the minutes passed, it became horrifyingly clear that his parents had been murdered. In a panic, Devon fled the house and called his Aunt Lori. At that moment, Devon didn't think to check on his brother Derek or his stepbrother William. Lori quickly alerted the police and rushed to the Liske house. When law enforcement arrived, they found a gruesome crime scene. In the master bedroom, under the sheets, lay the bodies of Bill and Susan. Bill had been shot in the face while still in bed, seemingly asleep. Susan had been shot 3 times in the head, and her body appeared to have been moved after her death. Forensic evidence later revealed that Susan had also been bludgeoned after she was already dead. In another room, police found the door locked. Upon forcing it open, they discovered 23-year-old Derek curled up in his bed, also killed. He had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, and a bloodied hammer matching his injuries was found nearby. The forensic investigation concluded that the family had been murdered in their sleep, starting with Derek, followed by Bill, and lastly, Susan. Muddy footprints were found around the house, leading to a pond in the backyard. Initially, investigators believed the murder weapon might have been discarded there, but after draining the pond, they found nothing. In total, 3 people had been murdered: Bill, Susan, and their son Derek. Later, during Susan's autopsy, it was discovered that she had been sexually assaulted post-mortem, a heinous addition to an already horrific crime. Aunt Lori immediately told the police that she suspected William, Bill's son, as the killer. William had a history of mental illness and deeply resented Susan. He had previously threatened and assaulted her. Adding to the suspicion, William had been staying at the house the night before the murders, and the family's white truck was missing, pointing further in his direction. Neighbors interviewed by the police mentioned hearing some noises, possibly gunshots, around 6:30 a.m. on Halloween morning, but living in a rural area, they didn't think much of it at the time. They also recalled seeing Bill and William returning from a hunting trip the day before and attending a Halloween party with the family that night. Everyone at the party seemed happy, but neighbors noticed that Derek wasn't present, which wasn't unusual given that Derek and William didn't get along. William rarely stayed overnight at the Liske home, but because Bill and Susan had been drinking at the party, they allowed William to sleep over after the festivities ended. This exception would later prove to be fatal for the Liske family. Reports suggest that when Devon returned home that morning before heading to church, his family may have already been killed by William. The fact that William spoke to Devon upon his return implies that William chose to let Devon leave the house without harming him. However, William did ask how long Devon would be gone, indicating that he might have murdered the rest of the family after Devon had left for church. Phone records show that the last call from Derek was at 2:02 p.m. the day before the murders. Authorities quickly tracked William down, finding that he had returned to the family's cabin. He had been hunting there with his father less than 48 hours earlier. Bill had taken a week off, and the two had only returned home 24 hours before the killings. A police officer reported spotting a white Ford truck and decided to check the cabin. The truck matched the description of the one missing from the Liske home. As police kept watch over the property, they observed William step out onto the porch, leaning against a post and smoking a cigarette. William was promptly arrested. Surveillance footage from a nearby restaurant showed William purchasing the sandwich. Forensic experts searched the cabin, gathering the truck and William's clothing as evidence during his initial arrest. At first, William was only charged with a single count of murder, which allowed the police to hold him until further charges could be brought before a jury. The jury would decide if additional charges would be filed. When William was transferred from the detention area to the intake unit, he was instructed to wear a suicide prevention suit, which he refused. An officer was tasked with overseeing William. He insisted William to wear the suit, leading to a physical confrontation where William scratched the officer's face. Another officer intervened, threatening William with a stun gun before he finally complied and put on the suit. Despite this altercation, no further charges were filed against him. The police were already familiar with William, as he had been in and out of trouble frequently. In November 2010, William was officially charged with 6 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts per victim. 3 of the charges were for premeditated murder, while the remaining 3 were for aggravated robbery. William pleaded not guilty to all charges, with his defense lawyer entering an insanity plea on his behalf. He was held in jail with bail set at $3 million. Sometime later, William appeared in court. He faced 6 counts of aggravated murder. He underwent a 30-day evaluation to determine if he is competent to stand trial. The 24-year-old was accused of murdering his father, Bill, his stepmother, Susan, and her son, Derek. If convicted, William would face the death penalty. Despite his history of mental illness, and after being evaluated twice for competency, William was ultimately found fit to stand trial. Knowing he could face the death penalty, William altered his defense strategy. On August 12, 2011, in a pre-trial hearing, he pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder in exchange for the prosecution waiving the death penalty. William was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Before his sentencing, William expressed remorse for killing his family, attributing his actions to Satan and his mental illness. William had struggled with long-term mental health issues, frequently stopping his medication, which only worsened his condition. Despite efforts from those around him, especially his father Bill, who never gave up on his son and tried to find treatment for him, the family conflicts continued. Tragically, Bill's love and efforts were in vain, and his life ended at the hands of his own son. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.